So this video is to help you identify when it's okay to break no contact. But the truth is, there's not a one answer fits all to every situation kind of answer to this. It just depends on, a lot of times it depends on the specifics. If you want to know in general, 30, 45, 60, and 90 days are usually good time frames to go on. But it's going to depend on the situation. So I'm going to go through a few different situations. So let's kind of start with one that, say that the breakup happened and it wasn't extreme on either side. It was almost like a mutual decision, or when one person did the breakup, the other person didn't plead, didn't chase. In that situation, I say wait at least 90 days. I'm not saying that it's going to take you 90 days. A lot of times, if you're doing no contact and the breakup was from a really good relationship and the other person didn't really even seem certain that they wanted it, and you didn't do too much damage by chasing too much, then chances are they're going to reach out to you before that 90 days. But you always want them to reach out to you if you can, because it maintains that sense that you are strong enough to live without them. And part of even having a lasting relationship is when two people know that both are capable of living without each other. They're just choosing, and they very much want to be together. So dependence isn't attractive. Choice out of strength is attractive. So sticking with that first situation, let's say it was a good relationship. The breakup went rather smoothly. There wasn't a lot of fireworks. There wasn't a lot of like overcoming with emotion, kind of pleading and chasing and begging, but the emotions stayed somewhat under control. In that situation, just set the marker in your mind for at least 90 days. Again, I'm not saying it's going to take that long, but 90 days, here's what's magical about 90 days. No matter what the situation, if you go that long, you take out that element of desperation. So let's say somebody broke up with me and I miss them every day and I can't get the thought of them out of my mind. Well, if I go into no contact and I'm choosing to project and I'm choosing to act out and behave in a way that shows strength I don't have, the other person doesn't know how much I might be obsessed with them. They don't know that I'm actually aching and hurting and wishing for one more chance. They don't know what I'm not showing. Now, if you're doing no contact, part of the things that people do to really kind of sabotage themselves is they'll tell everybody. They'll tell like their friends, they'll tell their coworkers, they'll tell church members, they'll tell relatives. So they think they're doing no contact, but all they're doing is being quiet and not communicating directly with the person they're trying to win back. But they're letting the hurt leak out into every other area of their lives, maybe even on social media. So you're sabotaging yourself. So if you're doing that, you haven't even really been in no contact. You've just been in controlled or limited, you could say, effectiveless no contact. Because if they still know that you want them and that you've never left the porch, then they can't really miss you. But let's say that you've done no contact the right way and it's been 3 months. After 3 months, even if they knew you didn't want the breakup, you've proven, even if it might not feel true to you, you've proven you're strong enough to live without them. Even if every day, every second of every day, every hour of every day, you felt like you did miss them, the truth is you've proven to them and yourself, even if it doesn't feel like it, that you are strong enough to live without them. Yeah, maybe it hurt. Maybe it felt impossible. Maybe it felt like you were barely hanging on, but you held on. So you might not even know it, but you've already proven to yourself that you are strong enough to live without them. And that increases your attractiveness. That reprojects that sense of high value in you. So even if it feels like you were just barely hanging on by the skin of your teeth, to use like an old phrase, the truth is you've kind of earned the credibility to reach out. But if you're going to reach out in that situation, then say something like, hey, just checking in. Try to look for something that gives you a legitimate reason to reach out. You know, hey, I ate at that restaurant, or hey, I saw that movie that was on that we went to see. It was on television the other night. But so basically you're just looking for an excuse to reach out to them that they will know almost instantly, just like you'll know that it's really just an excuse. But really it's just a temperature check. And you'll both know what's happening. But if they've missed you, if no contact has worked, if they're not with somebody else, or even if they're with somebody else, but they've started missing and second guessing and they're past that relief stage, 90 days is enough time that they could be getting out of that curiosity stage and really into that, like, serious regret, really wondering and fearing that they made a mistake. So all you need to do is give them the opportunity to express that they've started to regret it. So you'll know pretty quickly. So that's how you handle it. If it was a good breakup, there wasn't much damage involved, there wasn't too much emotional crisis. A lot of times if you're in no contact, it won't even get to that 90-day mark. But after the 90-day mark, minimal thing that you've got going for you is that you've proven you're strong enough to live without them, which gives you the credibility to reach out to them. As long as it's not like, don't do a 5-page letter, don't do like a poem, don't send roses, don't make this grand romantic gesture, because it tears down everything that you just spent 90 days rebuilding. The idea that you're strong enough, resilient enough, and you have an interesting enough life to live without them. You don't want to tear all that down just because you made it to the 90-day mark. So keep it controlled. Okay, but what if it was a more shortened relationship? Let's say you met somebody and it was just like fireworks. It was like passion. It was just like one of those things that you felt swept away, but it didn't actually go for very long. Maybe it only went a month. Maybe it went 2 months or 3 months. Does it change anything? Well, if it didn't last that long, shouldn't you act more quickly? Well, don't get me wrong. If it didn't last that long, but it burned bright and it was good, then chances are, if you do no contact and set that 90-day marker, it probably won't go 90 days. But if they don't reach out to you, let it go 90 days. Because then if they didn't really know you that well in the first place, if they weren't with you that long during that shortened relationship, then that 90 days has even more impact on them. Another example, and this is what I've been getting this last week a lot. They watch the video where I talk about what to do if you cause the breakup. How do you apply no contact? And what I'm getting from multiple people in comments and from a couple of callers are people saying, after I watched that video, I recognize now that I caused the breakup more than I thought. So there's a strong compulsion when you're going through a breakup. The pain is going to be intense enough that your empathy level is going to actually go up high. It's like their empathy for you has gone down. They're breaking up with you. But because you were the one that was broken up with and you're in pain, your empathy, or in other words, your compulsion to see things through the lens of their eyes and through their emotions is actually going to be higher. So let's say somebody broke up with you because they decided you don't spend enough time with them. Well, look, if you blew off their mom's funeral, or they were in a car accident and you couldn't be bothered to come by the hospital, or they needed you to help, babysit, but you left their 1-year-old alone for the last 2 hours because you made a promise to go play video games with your friends, you get the idea. If it's a glaring, unreasonable, that's the key. If it's an unreasonable reaction that you had, an unreasonable behavior that you refuse to change, then yeah, by all means, reach out to them. Acknowledge that what you did wasn't okay. Acknowledge that how you treated them wasn't a reasonable thing. But if you're understanding that it was just a misconception, or if it was a difference of opinion, don't reach out to them and apologize for something that was a reasonable behavior. So in other words, in the video that I made before, people are talking about how I described that two people can have a different view of things. They have different primary motivators. Some people might be motivated to have strong business success. Other people are motivated to have a strong family life. Neither one of those things are wrong. So if the person broke up with you because you're working too hard on your business, but it was a reasonable amount of focus, it was a reasonable amount of energy that you were devoting to that business for good reason, and you didn't just obviously and glaringly let them know that they don't matter, don't reach out and apologize for differences. Don't reach out and apologize for reasonable behavior. What you're accidentally doing is reinforcing to that other person that they were right to break up with you. Maybe they see you as being selfish, but if you weren't really selfish, don't apologize for being selfish. You can say that you're sorry that it came across that way. And it sounds like a meaningless apology, but sometimes that meaningless apology that says, I'm sorry I made you feel that way, I'm sorry it came across that way, sometimes it's actually the most authentic apology that you can muster. And it's better to say that than to start stepping into like claiming that you're guilty of things that you didn't really do. Like I've known some guys that are working themselves to death to take care of the person that they're with. A lot of times working themselves to death to take care of the woman they love and kids that aren't even theirs, like stepfathers. And then the woman will break up with them because she'll say, I don't feel like you make enough time for me. I don't feel like I'm as important to you as I need to be. And he didn't have any idea. He was legitimately working as hard as he can. I'm giving you an example of an actual call this week. He was actually doing as much as he could to make sure that he could take care of kids that weren't his kids and the woman that he loves. And she broke up with him and went with somebody else because that other person gave her more time. So could he argue with himself and say, I owe her an apology, I should break no contact? Because now I understand that time with her is her love language. And I didn't give her love in her love language. I should reach out and let her know I'm sorry about that. No, don't. That's not a reasonable interpretation. That person could have just had a conversation with you. So don't justify it in your mind. If it's not glaring, if it's not unreasonable, if your behavior isn't clearly crossing the line, in a way that if you described it to a stranger, they'd say, oh yeah, that was wrong. Then don't let your pain convince you that you need to reach out and take accountability for something you didn't even really do. It actually just hurts you. So that's one of the main things I want to make sure to say in this video. Don't let your compulsion to understand and empathize with their pain cause you to step into something and apologize for something that you never really did wrong. Another example from this week, I had a client in a call that said, I watched your video and I understand that maybe I did cause the breakup. I didn't think I did before, but the more I think about it, And that's a term that should kind of be a highlight to you. That's a little flag. If you have to really think about it to realize that, hey, maybe it really was your fault, that's probably your pain talking you into it. Now, if you slept with their sister and ran over their dog, then okay, you don't have to think about that. You know you did something wrong. But if you have to just think about it, that's your pain trying to talk you into the belief that you broke it. Because some part of you knows that if you broke it, then you can fix it. And if you can fix it, the two of you can be together. So there's a built-in wiring that makes a compulsion inside of you to take accountability, to take responsibility, to take blame for things that you don't really need to take blame for. And even if you take the blame, the best you're going to get is a microsecond of acknowledgement where they'll go, well, I appreciate you telling me that, but it's still too late. Or they might even come back for a short period of time, but what you did was sacrifice your self-respect. You sacrificed that sense of strength. You accidentally prove to them that you're not only not strong enough to live without them, you're not strong enough to even hold on to that strong sense of identity about yourself. In other words, they convinced you did something wrong, even when deep down you know that you didn't. So again, I can't stress that enough. Don't reach out, but especially in the situation I'm talking about now, a client I had this week actually told me that when his ex broke up with him, she said, I feel like you harassed me and pressured me into sex. In a weird way, I kind of feel like you violated me. You get the idea of what I'm talking about. Well, that's a huge deal. Like if you did do something like that, go turn yourself in. You should be buried under the jail. But if they start implying things about you that you know aren't the case, and sometimes that does happen, don't apologize for that. If they mention the police, if they mention a restraining order, if they mention an order of protection, look, if you've done anything to actually warrant those things, like I said, turn yourself in. Make a commitment to change. Go get help. I'm not your defender in that case. But if you're being accused of things and things like restraining orders and orders of protections are being used and it's completely unwarranted, and sometimes that does happen. You're just not living in the real world if you think that doesn't happen sometimes. If that language comes up, stop reaching out. Don't reach out. It's not even a 90-day mark. Leave them alone. And the fact that I might have to tell you to leave them alone, that's give you cause to take a deep breath and take a closer look at yourself. Because if you think you're going to prove to them how safe you are by giving it like 90 days and then reaching out, the only thing they're going to think is that, oh my goodness, he's been waiting 90 days to manipulate me again. So don't do it. If it's extreme language, if the law, if protection, if fear of their safety has been mentioned, for all parties involved, get away. And stop counting down for this 45, 60, or 90 days. There's no time frame once that's been mentioned where you need to be the one to reach out. And truthfully, even if they reach out after they mention those things, I would really think long and hard about even considering going back to somebody that could do that. Because if you didn't do it and they claimed it, now you're in danger. You're in danger of being framed as somebody that you're not. And if they could say it once when it wasn't warranted, what makes you think that they've changed so fundamentally that they're safe to talk to now? So please don't do it. Another one to cover is, okay, but what if they're dating somebody else? If they're dating somebody else, that creates another pause too. Don't go by the 30, 45, 60, or 90 days if they're with somebody else. That's going to put a pause on the effect of no contact. It's going to put a pause sometimes in the curiosity and in the regret stage and the fear of making a mistake. That whole mindset is going to get delayed, usually 2 to 4 months, but it can be longer. Usually on average, it's around 2 to 4 months. But there are a lot of times I have people say, well, I've been in no contact, but it's been 90 days. It's been really hard. I know he or she is sleeping with somebody else or dating somebody else. Is now the time that I need to reach out? Because I've heard that if it goes past 90 days, I don't have much of a chance and I'm not really risking anything anyway. I know where that's coming from, but the people saying that aren't usually talking about if that person's in another relationship. If they're still in the other relationship and you reach out, you really run a higher risk of reinforcing the new relationship, way more likely than them actually being reattracted to you. Now, sometimes, in some cases, there's probably going to be somebody in the comments that said, no, it worked out. Well, yeah, sometimes it's going to work out. But on average, the vast majority of the time, if they're with somebody else and then you reach out, even after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, they're just going to take that added affection and let it apply it to their ego. And then they're going to tell the new person that the old person just reached out, and they're both going to feel lucky to have each other, and they're going to see themselves as here, and they're going to view you as down here. So it doesn't really help you. So stop taking the day counting into effect or putting that priority on there if they're with somebody else. If they're with somebody else, I promise you, attraction dynamics, it's way better for you to show the strength to be able to walk away. Human emotion and human ego is much more likely to wonder about the person strong enough to leave the relationship than they are more inclined to actually feel admiration because you're fighting to save the relationship. If you're fighting to save the relationship, what you're really sacrificing is your own self-worth. And you're telling them, even if they've chosen somebody over you, you don't care. You just want one more chance to be with them. That's not actually attractive. It falls back into this idea that the key to winning somebody back is proving how overwhelmingly you love them. Like the endurance of your love is going to be so exceptional that that's going to prove you're the one to be with. That makes sense in your mind and in movies, but in reality, it doesn't come across as strength and it's not attractive. It comes across as desperation and it feels like dependence. And that's very unattractive, especially if they're already with somebody else. They might not even be out of limerence with that other person if you only give it 90 days. So as long as they're in that relationship, take a deep breath and look at every day like you're proving to them you are strong enough to live without them. In that case, I've seen somebody come back even after they were in another relationship more times than I can count. But it almost always only sticks if they were the one to reach out to you. So just take a deep breath if you find yourself in that situation. And then finally, what do you do if you're in no contact? But while you've been in no contact, and as strange as this might sound, this does happen. It happens fairly consistently. Let's say that you're a bit of a manipulator or a player. Like other people might refer to you as a douchebag. But let's just say you were the one that took them for granted. And maybe you went in no contact initially because your ego was wounded and you wanted to win them back. But since you've been in no contact and you started trying to understand relationship dynamics and trying to understand what made them finally walk away from you, it is possible, and it does happen, that while you're in no contact, you recognize and realize that you really did cause it. And you did something, like I said earlier, that is unreasonable. You really did keep ignoring them. They tried to tell you sincerely how they felt. And over again, you just kept telling them that what they felt didn't matter because you knew better. You knew what they needed. You knew what the relationship needed. You were just making all the calls, and their feelings and their priorities really didn't have much impact with you. If you realize that you really did cause it by that unreasonable, thoughtless, self-absorbed douchebag behavior, then good for you. Then you're one of those rare people that can actually develop a conscience later on in life, and you're becoming a better person. If you realize that you really did cause the breakup, and it's not just your pain talking you into it, then in that situation, yes, reach out to them. Don't stay in no contact, proving that you're strong enough to live without somebody that did the right thing by walking away from you. Because in that situation, they might not ever come back. There's kind of 3 stages of a relationship. And Joe Beam is the one that taught this to me. It's like there's 3 stages. You fall in love. After you fall in love, you go into conflict. If you stay in conflict long enough and you don't let that other person feel like their emotions and that their priorities and that their feelings and their very sense of importance to you doesn't matter, then maybe they played along for a long time. Maybe they stayed in the relationship for even years. But over time, you wore down that affection. If you stay in conflict long enough, you go into that 3rd stage. That's actually the most dangerous stage. It's more dangerous to a relationship than conflict, and it's known as the numb stage. When you're in the numb stage, that's what happens when the person that you've been with, you've accidentally told so many times and convinced them so many times that their feelings and that their principles and their priority and their very sense of self-worth doesn't really mean much to you. You have a plan, you have a personality, you have a behavior, everything about you, you're fine with, and you're not going to change it for anybody. And they can either be with you or they cannot be with you. But you're not going to change anything for them because you're the point. You're the one that matters. Well, if you stay in that situation long enough, that person you're with over time is going to realize that what they say doesn't matter. It's like maybe they tried to tell you by whispering it in your ear. Maybe they tried to scream it. Maybe they wrote it in a letter, chiseled it in stone, wrote it in clouds. They just get to a point where they realize on a subconscious level, it doesn't matter how many times I tell this person what I need. My feelings don't matter anymore. And then that's why they call it the numb state, because suddenly they don't feel anything anymore. And when they don't feel anything anymore, you'll find yourself losing a person that you never imagined would be strong enough to walk away. So if you do no contact and you absolutely cause the breakup in a situation like I'm describing, now they're numb. So no contact doesn't really affect that person in the numb state anymore. They accepted a long time ago that you don't care about them. So you showing the strength to live without them is not going to catch them off guard. It's not going to wake them up because they already expected that they didn't matter to you. So if that's you, then absolutely break no contact, because you never should have gone into no contact without letting them know that you can identify, you can see, your self-centered behavior. You can understand and empathize with their pain. You need to let them know you can empathize with the pain that you caused. You need to express more shame for the pain you caused them than you feel embarrassment at owning your mistake. If you don't do that, then no contact's not going to work for you. And that's the situation most of the time when no contact doesn't work. That's why it doesn't work. But again, I can't stress this enough. If this situation applies to you, it won't be close. You won't have to sit around thinking, well, maybe I did do that. I don't know. I mean, I tried to be a good person. I tried to be a good girlfriend or boyfriend or husband or wife. But, when I look at it from their point of view enough, I can start to see that maybe I did cause... No. What I'm talking about is if you did something that, again, is glaring, it's unmissable. Even your own friends would have been telling you, hey, why are you treating him or why are you treating her that way? So if you're one of those people that did something that is unmissably wrong and kept doing it until you drove them away, then don't ask how long do I need to stay in no contact. Get out of no contact, take accountability, take responsibility, express with empathy some shame, some remorse, and some pain for the pain that you caused, and then go into no contact. I'm not saying jump out and break no contact and then plead and chase until you've served your penance. I don't mean that, but express that you can understand, you can empathize and identify with why they broke up with you. Give them a chance to respond and then go back into no contact if they don't want to try it again. You still have a chance, but normally if they go into that numb state, it took them time to get there. It's going to take them time to leave it and come back to conflict or come back to love and give the relationship another chance. So I hope this helps. I know sometimes these situations can just be a lot more complex than just a simple 30, 45, or 60 days. So if I can be of any help with the specifics, you can schedule a call with me at dotheyloveme.com, and I'm Coach Ken. Thanks a lot. And please give me a like and subscribe and a comment if you can, if this has been helpful to you. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.